My name is John Cassidy, and what I'm about to share with you is something that changed my life forever. On October 3rd, 2022, I was driving to my grandson's baptism at Grace Community Church. It was a crisp autumn morning, and the leaves had just started turning those beautiful shades of amber and gold. As I drove down the quiet country roads, I felt a deep sense of peace. My daughter, Rachel, had recently returned to her faith after years of struggling, and this baptism felt like a fresh start, not just for her, but for our whole family. While driving, I clutched my rosary in my hand and quietly thanked God for bringing Rachel back to Him. I couldn't have imagined that within minutes, my entire world was about to change. I remember the exact moment it happened. As I rounded a bend in the road, a massive delivery truck came barreling toward me. The driver had lost control, and the truck was swerving wildly across the narrow road. I panicked and jerked the wheel hard to the right, hoping to avoid a collision. But the shoulder of the road was soft from the recent rain, and my tires slid out from beneath me. My car spun violently before tumbling down a steep embankment. I remember feeling the car flip over, once, twice, then again, before slamming into a tree with brutal force. The world went silent. Later, the paramedics told my family they had never seen anyone survive a crash that severe. For 22 minutes, I didn't. In those moments, I knew I had died. I didn't feel pain or fear, only a strange sense of calm. It was as if I had quietly stepped out of my body and into something else. I could see everything from above. My car crushed against the tree, glass scattered across the ground, and my own body, limp and lifeless, being pulled from the wreckage. I watched as paramedics desperately tried to revive me, but there was no panic inside me. Instead, I felt like I was being drawn away from it all, gently, yet irresistibly, as if something far greater was calling me home. The world below began to fade, and suddenly, I found myself moving through what I can only describe as a tunnel of living light. This wasn't the typical light at the end of the tunnel people often talk about. It was far more intense, far more real. The light seemed alive, pulsing with colors that were richer and more vibrant than anything I'd ever seen. I could feel it on my skin, hear it humming like music, and even taste something sweet in the air. Every sense I had was heightened in ways I can't fully explain. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was seeing things as they were truly meant to be, vivid, pure, and overwhelming in their beauty. As I moved deeper into this tunnel of light, I realized I wasn't just seeing my surroundings, I was feeling them. The light carried a warmth that filled me with a sense of love and peace unlike anything I had ever known. It wasn't just around me, it was inside me, as if the light itself was a living presence that knew me intimately. Every fear, every regret, every painful memory seemed to dissolve in that warmth. I felt completely safe, as if I was being embraced by something far greater than myself. Then something incredible happened. My entire life began to unfold before me. It wasn't like watching a movie or flipping through memories. Instead, I was inside those moments, feeling everything I had felt at the time. But more than that, I could also feel what others had experienced because of my actions. I saw times when I had shown kindness, like when I once paid for a woman's groceries because she'd forgotten her wallet. I never thought much of that moment, but now I could feel what it had meant to her. She had been at her breaking point that day, and that small gesture gave her the hope she desperately needed. But I also saw the painful moments, times when I had hurt others, sometimes without even realizing it. I relived a memory where I'd ignored a friend who was struggling, too wrapped up in my own problems to notice she needed someone to talk to. I felt her heartbreak and loneliness in a way I never had before. Each memory, good or bad, was laid bare before me, yet I didn't feel judged. There was no anger or condemnation, only understanding. It was as if this presence wanted me to see these moments not to punish me, but to help me realize how deeply our choices affect the people around us. Then, everything shifted. The light seemed to grow even brighter, and suddenly I found myself standing before someone I knew instantly. It was Jesus. There's no way I can fully describe what it was like to be in his presence. He wasn't like the paintings I'd seen in church. He was radiant, glowing with a light so powerful it seemed to flow through me. Yet his face was gentle and kind. His eyes, they held this incredible depth, like they could see every part of me, every mistake, every flaw. Yet they were filled with nothing but love. A love so overwhelming that I couldn't hold back my tears. Then he spoke, and when he said my name, Angela, it felt like that one word carried more meaning than anything I'd ever heard. In that moment, I understood things I couldn't explain. I knew I was fully known. Every thought, every fear, every moment of doubt, and yet I was still completely loved. As I stood before Jesus, I felt like my entire life had been exposed. Every thought, every mistake, every regret. Yet there was no shame. Instead, I felt an overwhelming sense of love, a love so deep it felt like it was pouring into every part of me. His eyes, filled with both power and compassion, seemed to speak directly to my soul. Then he said, I have brought you here for a purpose. There are things you must see, and when you return, you must share them. I didn't fully understand what he meant, but before I could ask, everything around me began to shift. Suddenly, I was no longer in the tunnel of light. I found myself standing in a place so beautiful and vivid that words can hardly describe it. The sky seemed to glow with colors more vibrant than anything I'd ever seen, and the air itself felt alive, as if it was filled with music I could somehow feel in my chest. All around me, I saw people, countless souls, moving with purpose and joy. They weren't just resting or floating aimlessly. They were alive in ways I'd never imagined. Some were creating stunning works of art, while others were singing songs so powerful they seemed to stir something deep inside me. I noticed a group of people gathered in what looked like a garden, sharing stories and laughing together. There was no pain, no sorrow, only peace. I felt like I could stay there forever, completely content. But then Jesus spoke again, his voice calm yet firm. This is what I created you for, he said. A life of joy, purpose, and connection with me. He explained that heaven wasn't a place of endless rest. It was a place where people flourished, where every soul had a role and everything they did was filled with meaning. It felt perfect, too perfect to leave. But just as I began to feel that peace sink deeper into me, Jesus' expression grew serious. There's more you must see, he said. And with those words, everything around me began to change. In an instant, the beauty and peace of heaven seemed to fade away, and I found myself looking down at earth. What I saw filled me with a deep sense of dread. I witnessed scenes of chaos, disasters, suffering, and people lost in confusion and fear. Cities were crumbling under the weight of violence and division, while others wandered aimlessly, chasing after things that brought them no real peace. I saw families torn apart by bitterness and hatred, and people drowning in loneliness despite being surrounded by others. It was as if the world had grown colder, darker, and yet most people seemed blind to it. Jesus' voice broke through the overwhelming sight, calm yet full of concern. Many of my people have forgotten that they are in a battle, he said. They have become too comfortable, too distracted by the things of this world. But hard times are coming, times that will test their faith in ways they are not prepared for. His words shook me. I could feel the urgency in his voice, like a warning that couldn't be ignored. Then he showed me something that gave me hope. Among the darkness, I saw pockets of light, small but powerful. These lights were people, men, women, and children, standing strong in their faith, even when the world around them seemed to be falling apart. I watched as their kindness, courage, and prayers spread like ripples in the water, reaching people who had felt forgotten and lost. Jesus turned to me and said, "This is why you must go back. My people must be reminded of what truly matters. They must know that no act of love, no moment of faith, is ever wasted." I wanted to stay with him. I wanted to remain in the peace and beauty of heaven, but deep down I knew he was right. There was work to be done, people who needed to hear this truth. "Tell them," Jesus said once more, "tell them that I am coming soon." Before I could respond, I felt myself being pulled away, as though something was tugging me back toward my body. The warmth of heaven began to fade, and the light around Jesus slowly dimmed. I remember crying out, "Please, let me stay." I didn't want to leave. The peace I had felt in his presence was unlike anything I had ever known, and the thought of returning to a broken world filled me with fear. But Jesus looked at me with that same unwavering love and said, "It's not your time yet." His words echoed in my mind as the world around me faded to darkness. The next thing I knew, I was gasping for air. Pain rushed through my body, and the muffled sounds of voices filled my ears. I could hear paramedics shouting instructions, their faces blurry above me. I was back in my broken body, lying on the cold ground beside what was left of my car. I couldn't move, but I remember whispering, "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you." Even in that moment of agony, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, a peace that stayed with me through every surgery, every difficult step of recovery, and every sleepless night that followed. As I healed, I couldn't forget what Jesus had shown me, the warning, the hope, and the urgent message he had given me to share. I knew I couldn't keep it to myself. The world needed to know that heaven is real, that Jesus' love is deeper than we can imagine, and that every act of kindness, no matter how small, holds eternal significance. I've realized that we aren't just here to survive. We're here to love, to serve, and to prepare for the day when we'll stand before him. If you're hearing this today, know that your life has a purpose, even if you can't see it right now. God is calling you to something greater, something far more beautiful than anything this world can offer. Don't wait until it's too late to seek him. Surrender your heart to Jesus, trust in his love, and know that he is always with you, even in the darkest moments. If this story spoke to you, I encourage you to subscribe for more testimonies like this one and share this story with others. Someone you know may be searching for answers, and your voice could be the one that leads them closer to the truth. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, please consider subscribing to this channel so you won't miss what's to come. Thank you for listening, and may God bless you.